and welcome back to another episode of the Acquire podcast. I'm your host, Jennie Wright. I'm a list build and lead generation expert and sometimes fractional CMO. And I'm really excited because today we have an incredibly inspiring guest who's been a game changer for many expertpreneurs out there. And I'm really excited because we have Melanie Benson joining us. So she is the authority amplifier and possibility igniter, and she's been helping entrepreneurs achieve $1 million visibility and reaching those 5-6-figure revenue months since 2000. So for a good chunk of time, a lot longer than I've been doing this. Melanie is the host of her own highly rated podcast, Amplify Your Success. She's also the author of must-read books like Rewired for Wealth and Entrepreneur.com's Startup Guide to Starting an Information Marketing Business. Melanie's here to share some pretty powerful stuff. We're going to get into some strategies and some insights, and she's here to elevate your business to the next level, just like me. So Melanie, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for hosting, and I can't wait to dig into this fabulous conversation with you.
Yeah, and if you said you listened to a couple episodes before you popped on, I like to get a little bit deep. And there's a lot of, we can go into so many things. Like I want to dive into the history of why you've been doing this since 2000, but there's a couple things I want to talk about first. And one of them is you're known as this like authority amplifier, which I love that. Can you kind of explain what authority amplification means, why it's crucial, and how it's especially crucial post-pandemic?
Well, I stumbled into I've had several titles over the 24 years in business, and this one kind of stuck because I discovered that many people who coach, who have an expertise that they sell, they do some kind of a service for clients, they were recognizing they were a best kept secret. They noticed that their best clients were choosing the flashier, big name competitors over themselves. And when they would hire me, because they were ready to shed that best kept secret invisibility cloak, right? It's like nobody wants to be invisible. Well, some people do actually want to be invisible, but that's another subject. There are a couple key pieces that were missing. And one of them in particular was the audience, the community, the potential clients weren't recognizing why they should choose that individual over that big name expert, even if that person had more experience, better track record, was more authentic, had better run programs. If the community at large didn't recognize their authority, they were invisible to them. They weren't necessarily a contender. And what I started to do is teaching people tiny shifts they could make in their message, in their visibility strategy, and even in how they were designing their offers, so that their recognizable expertise could showcase brighter and more significantly, and they became the logical choice rather than oh, that's nice, but this person over here is flashier. And you don't actually have to be flashy. You don't have to have massive marketing budgets, as you know, but you do need to be recognized for how you solve a problem for someone. So that's really how I ended up as this authority amplifier. And when I looked back on my trajectory, what did I do for myself as well as clients that I'd worked with over the 24 years that got the best results? That was the key piece. Tiny optimal shifts in their positioning, their messaging, and their offers that gave big leaps in results.
I'm totally fluxumed with the fact that that is a perfect answer. I love that on several levels. And also because a lot of people do sort of stay in the wings. If you started off like me as a virtual assistant or an OBM or something like that, you're used to kind of being in the background. You're used to being the person behind the scenes. And getting out in front can be really scary. And I've always, and I might be a little bit more direct than you, I'm not sure, but I've kind of had like the get your big girl panties on, stop. I think I used this word before we even hit record, stop faffing about and just get the thing done. Because I actually believe really strongly that being seen and being in your own authority or being out there and everything has nothing to do with you and has everything to do with what people need. Like they need your gift. And if you're going to hide and not sort of put yourself out there in the right way, not have your message in the right way, not being able to share that in the right way, then you're kind of robbing people of that really great gift that you have. So I kind of frame it from the like let's stop the stuff and keep going. But that's sort of how I look at it. I think it's kind of fun. I'd love to ask you about the process of building authority. Can you kind of walk us through a step-by-step process for building authority in this really crowded marketplace? Kind of like, what are the foundational elements that every entrepreneur should kind of focus on to start that amplification? You said it was small tweaks. So what's the first kind of steps that people should look at?
I think the first one is often overlooked because it's scary for people to claim this. And that is, what are you an expert in?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do in a way that you do it for the person that you do it for that's unique? Sometimes it's about leaning into some specificity. Like, you can't be everything to everybody. Entrepreneurs are not your market.
Not
All
on the whole.
stay-at-home moms are not your market.
Yeah.
All
yeah.
marketers are not your market, right? Like,
Yeah.
whatever you've been saying up to now. And, I'll be the first to admit, Jennie, and if you're listening in and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I need to pick a lane and stick to it. Like, really, Melanie, is that what you're telling me? Let me just say this. There are different types of energies, if you will. There's different ways that people best connect with their audience. I use human design as one of the tools in helping people design their brand presence. And the way I do it isn't necessarily the way you have to do it. But when I was year 1.5 in my business, I remember struggling so much to get clients. And this really amazing, wise coach who'd been doing it for 10 years at that point, think of the wise man that's sitting on the top of the hill, right? And he's
Sure.
the coach to all coaches. He sits me down and he says, Melanie, you've got to pick a subject. Like, you got to get specific. You got to know, people have to know why you.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so terrifying to think, but I don't have any clients now. Why am I eliminating all the potential avenues? And yet, as I specialized and I honed in a little more and a little more and a little more, not only did I have more clients, but clients were willing to invest more to work with me. So I think the first step is you've got to be willing to hone in your message, hone in your focus, hone in who you work with and what you do in a way that as somebody's running across what you do in your messaging, they instantly go, oh, that is what I wanted for me.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be willing to put that specificity in your messaging. So the second piece of optimizing, if you will, your authority positioning is your messaging.
Yeah.
And you know this, you do marketing in your sleep, right?
Yeah.
And we know that message matters, but for so many people who may be listening in today, or sometimes it's the cobbler's shoe, right? It's like, I'm good at this for everybody else, but man, I'm having a hard time seeing the forest through the trees for my own message, which definitely is me. I always do better when someone else can reflect back to me the message that I'm stepping into. But you have to have a message that conveys this magnetic quality. Like, they need to feel this irresistible pull with the message they read. They need to hear themselves in whatever message you're putting out. And if they're not hearing it, or it's not compelling and intriguing in a way, it's like, what is that?
Yeah.
That sounds so interesting, right? Then your message isn't doing its job. It's not doing the heavy lifting for you, and your authority positioning is waning. The third thing that I do with people is we look at things like your offer or your client journey. Like, how is your offerings shouting from the rooftops that you're an authority at what you do? So this may get a little triggery, but hey, we're going to go there today anyway, right? You want to ask the deep questions.
I do.
If you're not charging enough, your authority isn't shining bright enough. Now, I'm not saying you got to charge $100,000 to work with you, but there are places where people consistently undercharge, even against commonly known competitors who have different or offer something similar. And if you're not brave enough to have something of that caliber, then there's like this unconscious message we're sending out, like, I don't believe in what I'm doing, or I don't value my time, right? There's little unconscious
or it's not
messages.
as good as.
Or is this really going to be worth my time? Because why should I be getting it for so cheap, right? And it's like, people often don't even realize they're thinking these things, but having appropriately priced value-driven offers is a way we subtly showcase our authority.
Yes.
Because when you know you're good at what you do and you're an authority in it, you're willing to charge accordingly with it. Now, I want to be really clear. I am not a fan of charging $1 bazillion for things just because you can. We're not trying to fund your Learjet. That's not what we're doing, right?
Okay.
We're talking about charging in a way that the value proposition makes sense and is attracting the right clients for you.
Mm-hmm. Completely.
So those are three things. And then we start looking at now, what's your visibility strategy? How are you showcasing your authority to the world? What is the platform that you're building that allows you to like elevate your expertise so that people can see you and recognize that you know what you're doing, that you have a track record, that you're taking the lead in the conversation. So a podcast is one of them.
Exactly.
A show like this is one of them. Hosting events is one of them. Maybe authoring a book, which is something I'm working on right now. Is like I've had a lot of books, but I haven't had one recently on the work that I'm doing today. So writing a book, authoring a book. There are different ways that can be really tuned into different people's superpowers, but you need a way to not be one of the sea of sameness, but really elevate your brand, your message, and the work you do, and even who you are, so people can start to build a relationship with you and choose you.
That hits home, the sea of sameness.
Yeah.
Oh, niching in is such a underrated opportunity, right? And really going in on that one thing. When you think you're sort of like the jack of all trades, jack of all trades, master of none. I really do believe that if you are that person who is super focused on one thing and you do it super well, then you can add in those other modalities, but own that space, right? Whatever that is, own that first, and then you can add back in, which I love. And then when you're talking about creating the platforms or participating in the platforms, I mean, now you're speaking my language, right? We're talking about podcasting. We're talking about being a guest on other people's speaking opportunities like summits or part of bundle giveaways, which we were talking on before we hit record. And I'm so getting you on the next one. Okay. Like that's okay. Because I can't get you on this one. I know. And we couldn't get you on the first one. I'm going to get you on the next one. I'll even move the dates. That's happening.
Oh,
okay. Like that's my promise.
That's tantalizing. Okay. All right.
Listen to me now. It's going to happen. This is my promise. It's now like recorded. No, I can't get away from it now. But the creation of these platforms, I think, is really, really essential. And I think also your message, from things that I've read about you, from conversations that you and I've had, it doesn't have to be hard. It just has to be something that's super clear and helps do the heavy lifting for you. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we want to kind of remove that barrier to entry for people to kind of get to know you, understand what you do and how you function and what you can do to support them. And I think like podcasting, what else besides like podcasting and other events would you say are like a really good way to do it?
Well, even being seen as a guest expert on other people's shows is a way of kickstarting this. And this really taps into what I have now started calling $1 million visibility, because I think sometimes we make it too hard.
Yeah.
We're making it really complicated. We're like, oh my God, I have to perfect all these things or learn all these things. And yes, I want you to be strategic and I want you to have a plan. And sometimes we have to learn some skills before it all starts to come together. And I think just getting your message clarified, getting your titles really dialed in, and figuring out like who already has built an audience where my community is looking for answers. That's how I kickstarted my visibility strategy in the very beginning. At that time, it was live events. Now it's podcasts and virtual events are mostly what I do, although I do some in-person speaking. But when you do that, there's a couple things that are happening that I think we maybe undervalue the impact of. And one is you are tapping into instant audience. So someone else has already built the audience. They've already been attracting people who love what they do and are following their every step. And now you've been given this prized position of sharing your message in front of that audience, whatever audience that is, instant audience. right?
Mhm.
So there's probably sales in that room or in that experience. There are definitely leads that are going to raise their hand and go, yes, I want to know more. And there's so much more. I'll unpack the whole compounding effect of $1 million visibility if you want, but we can't undervalue that, because when we step onto that stage, not only is it an audience, but you're borrowing influence and credibility from that host. Because if that host has done a good enough job, they've vetted you. They trust you. They believe in what you do because they're sharing you with their audience. So
Exactly.
you better do your job, right? be
Yeah,
be a good guest on their stage.
completely. And you create a transfer of credibility from the original host over to you. And as part of, and I'd love to know more about $1 million visibility, obviously. And I think that is, or $1 million, yeah, $1 million visibility. I'd want to know more about what that means. I'd also like to know, like, do you feel good sharing some of the crazy stuff that people do that you're like, no, 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 that is not $1 million visibility. That is not the plan. You have gone off the game plan and we got to
Yes.
pull you back. Like, what does that look like?
I think there's a few things, and so part of this is just about being a guest expert, but on a deeper level, I think let me just say what $1 million visibility is, because I think this will start to set the context right. So we were talking about being a guest on other people's stages and on their shows, and that's what I call the first wave of visibility. Obviously, that visibility is precious. It's valuable, right? And you're going to generate your own part of that by sharing it with your audience. The host is sharing it with their audience. Valuable exposure. But the second level is digging deeper and cultivating a little more with the host themselves. So where I think a lot of people make this giant mistake is they see this as a one-off transaction. It's a gimme mentality. Give me the visibility. I'm not sharing it. I'm not doing anything else with it. I'm taking your audience from, like I'm just going
Yep.
to lean into that audience
Take.
and yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
so it's very transactional. It's very one-dimensional result. And that's why a lot of people never get any ROI from this strategy. So level one, you get access to the audience. Level two is going deeper with the host. What else could we do together? How could we explore? There's so much collaboration potential. Leverage the conversation in the green room. Be willing to give back. Create a back and forth relationship. But that's not where it ends. Where $1 million visibility really takes off, and this is what I've experienced in my life over and over and over again, is what happens when the people who hear you or see your message being showcased on that stage in that audience, who also host events, right? Then they say, hey, Melanie, I love $1 million visibility. I've got an event. I'd love to have you speak at it. Hey, Jennie, like, oh my gosh, what you're talking about with the fractional marketing, so needed right now. Can you come and talk at my summit? I'm booking shows for 5 more podcast hosts. Can you come? So now we're not just one-to-one, we're one-to-many. And the compounding, that ripple, like, just goes exponential. And then we really keep going and going and going, because all of those, especially on podcasts, are going to continue to drive listeners and leads and more visibility for years.
Yes. It's compounding. It's like putting money into something that actually gives you interest.
Right. And maybe even it's like, this is the thing that the ROI 10x's,
Mhm.
because it's not just a 1 or 2 or 3x. If you're doing this well and you've used the strategy that I teach in my programs, you're actually turning these visibility opportunities into millions of dollars of visibility from the impact level and the income level.
Completely. Okay, you're like my sister in the strategy of these things. We're so on the same wavelength, and I talk about the same things, which I love. And getting your perspective, I think, is amazing. I love, and first of all, the names of your programs are like just fantastic because they're
Oh,
clear. They
thank you.
tell people exactly what you do, which is fantastic. I want to talk about personal branding because that plays such a huge role, I think, in what you're doing in brand authority, and also just getting your everybody to know who you are. What are the essential components, do you think, for like a really powerful personal brand? And how can entrepreneurs really ensure that their brand authentically reflects their values?
Ooh, I love the values piece coming into this because I think
Yeah.
values are where we have this unconscious tether to people. And values are either repelling or attracting.
Hmm.
And you don't even actually have to say what your values are out loud, but how you show up, the words you use, the messaging, your practices are basically teaching others what your values are. For some people, they're going to just put them right out there on their website. And others, it's like your beingness is demonstrating your values. And I think when we look at our personal brand, I think you first have to know, what are your values? What do you want to be known for? And this is actually the very first thing I do with my clients. I have a program I teach called 100K at 30 Accelerator. And the very first thing we do is, what do you want to be known for? What is the recognized authority about? And so we're doing a values exercise to help uncover that. And for me, since the very first time I did my values in 2003, my number one value is connection.
Mm.
My second value is fun. And my third value is, like, it's not profit per se, but
Mhm.
it's abundance. It's financial abundance, but done in a way that's really based on effort and result. So
That's
there's not a
completely
word for
different.
it that I know. It's an energy.
Yeah, I
And
completely agree.
you look at my stuff and you're probably going to know that's how I am.
Mhm.
Now, I have other values that have emerged since then, like authenticity. Not that that was never my value, but I think 24 years in business, Jennie, it reveals to you any place where maybe you are not 100% grounded in that value, right? And it's like, it's very easy to get pulled into everybody else's ways of doing things. It's very easy to get pulled into things that you think might work
Yes.
because as marketers and business owners, we're always having to kind of tweak and refine and lose connection to some of your authenticity. One of the things that happened for me along the way in my own personal brand was, we built such a huge business at one point that I lost the thing that I valued the most, which was connection.
Oh
I
no.
was not feeling connected to my clients anymore. And it's not that I have to handhold every single person, but I treasure the ability to guide somebody. And if
Mhm.
I'm not feeling connected to them, I can't do what I do. Like, my magic doesn't turn on the same way. So, we learn, we grow, we evolve, we find our way back. But I think as a personal brand, you need to know, what do you stand for? What do you want to be known for? And what are the ways that you want to create a energy around that that repels the people who don't get it, don't want it, can't get on the same page with you,
Yeah.
and attracts and pulls in like a magnet with this irresistible quality the people who do.
You said something earlier that really I caught my ear and I've been like holding it in the back of my mind just to bring up now. And that is, she's like, what is it? Oh my God. Uh, you mentioned that you use human design.
Mm.
I've had my human design stuff done. I have a terrible memory, as people know, but I believe it was like master connector or something was
Yeah, that
the
would not be human design, or at least not in the ones I know.
what would it,
There are 5 key human design types: manifestor, manifesting generator,
manifestor
generator.
generator.
Yes, that's what I think we uncovered when we talked about it before.
Yes.
Also, to complete that sentence, there's projector and reflector, which are more rare.
How did you like when did you start putting human design into what you were doing? Like 20 years ago, 24 years
Mm.
ago, nobody was talking about that stuff
Yeah.
at all. So when did you start implementing that as a like a modality into what you do?
Well, I first learned about it about maybe 16, 15 years ago, somewhere in there. And a friend literally sat me down. We were having lunch and she's like, "Girl, you're burned out because you're a manifester operating like a generator." I was like, mind blown. Like, what does this mean? And how do I fix it right now? And so it kind of sent me into this exploration of how human design might really serve me as a human. And then I was doing a lot of masterminding with a friend of mine in Australia who uses human design a lot. And she started to drip these little things to me about I'm a manifester. And when she would share these things, I would say, oh my gosh, she's so right. And it caused me to go deeper and start to look at how can we know ourselves at the deepest core, the blueprint that our soul, emerged with, and use that in a way to access our most authentic messaging, our most unique expression of our authority,
Mhm.
to really understand maybe patterns that are operating like undercurrents behind the scenes in our DNA and in our cells. Because we have these patterns that are running all the time. And so I started using that to help my clients uncover where they had these disruptive money patterns, or
Mm.
where they were maybe shying away or having some blocks to the way they could be more visible to their ideal clients
Mhm.
in a way that was so authentic and not what Melanie was saying to do, but emerging from their own energetic blueprint. And it was like mind blowing how aligned it was and how it unlocked years of stuckness or confusion. So that's kind of the base of how I use it, a little bit differently maybe than other people use human design. And it's just been an extra tool in my toolbox.
I love adding tools to my toolbox. I think when I started my own entrepreneurial journey back in 2012, that my toolbox was very formal, very regulated, and very empty because I was coming from corporate and I had none of the soft skills that you need for this. And I think that we're constantly evolving, and that's part of our magic as entrepreneurs, that we're constantly refining and evolving and testing and being a bit different and looking for new ways to improve. I think that's really unique to what we do. And so I'd love to sort of wrap this up with having you give us a little pep talk of, if somebody's listening to this and they're like, okay, Melanie, I'm on board. I want to do this. I'm stuck. Like, I'm tired of being in the background and I really want to step into my authority. What little pep talk would you give that person so they actually take that next step?
Well, first of all, usually the reason why we're holding back a little bit or a lot is typically there's some kind of unhealed block around visibility. And so just know it's common, but you don't have to build a pitch a tent and live there, right? And what I always tell my clients is you are designed to be a lighthouse. Your message puts that bright light in the lighthouse. And if your ideal clients are out there looking for a solution and they can't see the light coming out of your lighthouse, they're choosing someone else.
Mm.
So your job is to strengthen and optimize and build your confidence in your personal power around your message and your uniqueness, and let that light shine as bright as possible. Because if they can't see you, they're not going to hire you.
Simplest terms. That's exactly it. Nobody knows you're there. They're not coming for you. So they got to know you're there and you got to put it out there. I love the lighthouse analogy. That's
Yeah, I
fantastic.
kind of stumbled into my vocabulary one day. It's like a lighthouse, like, but the light's off in your lighthouse. So let's get the light turned on. And sometimes people are a little traumatized by shining bright. So
Yes.
let's up level that business energetic and allow that light to shine bright again. Because you know,
We're meant
you don't
to.
have to be inauthentic to do that, but you do need to have a way to shine.
It sounds like you give people a lot of personal power to be able to do the things that make them really successful and get them to those like the 5-figure months and up to that $1 million visibility. So thank you for what you're doing. I think it's fabulous, as you know, but you help a lot of people and that's great.
Thank you.
How can people connect with you, find you, hear more about your message?
Well, I think you can find me on any social media platform. Facebook's my favorite, and LinkedIn. So feel free to reach out there. Let us know that you heard me with this amazing Jennie Wright on Acquire podcast. And I have a resource that I think might be a great place to start. If you are really curious about this $1 million visibility and you're thinking, okay, how can I activate this quality or borrow it from other people? If you're starting there, then you can go download my free framework. It's the 7 key elements that need to be in place for you to start borrowing and succeeding with that $1 million visibility. If you go to melaniebenson.com/acquire, you can download that and walk through it like you're self-assessing, like how optimized are these different pieces of my business right now? And it'll just be very illuminating to see where can you strengthen and what do you already have as a strength that you can lean on right now.
Amazing. We're going to have that link in the show notes as well as everywhere you can find Melanie. And I can attest, she is very, very reachable on Facebook. We have quite the thread going in our little messenger, and that's how we started talking. So I just want everybody to think about what it means to have your own brand authority, to shine that light and to stop being in the shadows. I know I had my own personal journey having my own podcast, scary AF, but love it. And it is a really great vehicle. And I highly recommend that if you're not having your own podcast, you get on other people's podcasts and you get into that visibility, which is fabulous. And it does pay dividends back. So starting now, great. You can do that and you can start building from it, which is fantastic. So Melanie, thank you so much again. Really appreciate it. And if you're listening and you like the podcast, please consider subscribing, leaving a comment. I'd love to hear what you think. And also, if you're on YouTube, give us a like. Let me know you're there. So thank you so much for listening, everybody. And as always, the Acquire Podcast is brought to you by the Odd Phonic Podcast Network. Thanks so much.